Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to do a scene here trying to incorporate a couple of designs from my private collection from Gumbo Graphics and the Moon Rose rubber stamps. This one, I don't know if it's available anywhere. The skeleton, I've seen it in different catalogs and whatnot, but we're going to do this setting. I don't know, I do this, a similar type of composition. I think I've done it a couple times before. But I like to do it around Halloween coming up here, and it'll be upon us before we know it. It's almost, September here, and then, once those holidays come around, it's like we always say, they just kind of snuck up on us, but I'm not going to be behind with my Halloween scene here, so let's see what we can come up with. Okay, so I'm going to do a setting. I'm going to do it all in my VersaFine Clair. I've typically used dye-based inks in the past for so many of my different compositions, but I want to try some other things here, and I'm thinking, as far as the composition goes, I want to do something that feels akin to like a charcoal drawing, okay? Now there's going to be, much more fine details in this drawing because I'm using rubber stamps which give nice crisp impressions, but I want it to have the feel somewhat of kind of like a dirtier, kind of murky application of media like charcoal tends to do. You can't get really super definitive like black and white pen and ink work with charcoal stick, okay? But let's see what we can come up with. I was almost thinking, man, I could almost like take some of this and do like finger painting. You do that with charcoals a lot of times, or you take like a chamois cloth and you spread the charcoal around. Now, pigment inks are, they're almost like paints to me. And if we apply it like on a paper towel or something like that, it gives me the feeling of using like an oil pastel or something like that. But, the oil pastels are, they're somewhat close to charcoals, except they're oil-based. But let's see what we can come up with here, okay? So what I'm doing right here is I'm layering some of the grass texture stamp, okay? Grass texture right here is a good complement for the sedge filler. The sedge filler I use for just about, I don't know, a large percentage of my kind of grassy types of terrains. I mean, I could go with more of the grass, texture in the background too, but see, I'm doing this like a little bit of a slope. You can do it straight, you can do it, extreme, you can do it, straight and, more extreme sloped, whatever, it'll have a feeling of these like undulating hills in the background or whatnot. Okay, now let's put this little figure right here. I'm thinking I want her a little bit embedded into the grass as opposed to having this harsh line here, which would be more, kind of indicative of something being on like a hard surface, okay? Not sitting within something, so I always tell people in my videos, when you get something like that, or that type of situation, if something is standing in grass, unless the grass is like, half an inch tall or something like that, if, their feet or something like that, if these figures were walking in grass, then you don't color in the bottom of their feet so that it looks like they're standing in something. Or if they're standing in water, don't do the bottom of their feet because you're saying, that the water's, maybe a couple inches deep or something like that. So, remove accordingly. If these figures are standing in waist deep, then don't, color them in from the, the waist down. Okay. This one right here, let's see what it looks like. Okay, I undermask a little bit too, like this. Okay, I have some of that grass showing, so it looks like that. So I don't have this space in between this and the grass down there, like these white spaces, which should be okay if that happens. You just kind of fill it in with tone. But I like to get as close as I can with my impressions to the final result, okay? So I try to leave out, I try not to do anything that's going to you know, create extra work for me later on. Okay? All right, now let's see here. I'm going to stamp this. This is going to be my dancing little skeleton up here. He's rejoicing because it's his time to shine. He gets to come out once a year and to dance and have fun. Skeletons aren't inherently evil, right? They're people. They're us. I guess some would be. They're in horror movies, right? But some of them, they get a bad rap. Okay, so see this right here? I did this little slope of grass in here, but it's like this. This is your masking right here. There's a 1/4 inch showing there. This isn't a hard process, folks. You just have to undo all of your kind of... Some of them are what I call tedious processes, which are necessary with a lot of forms of stamping if you're dealing with kind of linear styles of drawings. Because you can't have like crisscrossing lines and everything. So this is a very different process of kind of freedom of movement and application, ease of application. All right, so I'm stamping this, and it's going to be sitting in the grass, just like, you know, anything. I only use lines when I absolutely have to. Okay. And on there, we have that. Okay, so it's sitting right in that grass. And then, I haven't used my columns in quite some time. I need to do some Greco-Roman stuff. I wouldn't call this a Greco-Roman scene or something like that, but it has those elements. Okay, now this one right here, I don't really feel the need for stamp positioners most of the time, although when I see them used, I'm thinking, those look pretty good, you know. I just eyeball things, okay? I just think it's a lot faster and easier. But I do get, you know, the point of them when I see them used. It's like, oh. And when I see them used, I'm thinking, I might have to get that, well, you know, somewhere along the line. I didn't get that right down at the base. There's a little bit of space right there. See, like something like that. But that little, you know, I'm not sweating a, you know, some 1/16 of an inch space because I'm just going to color it in anyway. Okay, I just want to get it, you know, straight up, you know. I don't want it angled or something like that. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if I can... I get to do my stamps a little bit more the more I use them. So this, you know, I just stamped it a little bit lower this time. Okay, so there we go. There's a little tiny bit of space in between. I could overlap. Now these, you know, these are hard angle things, so I don't overlap by 1/8 of an inch like you do with the grasses and everything else, you know, all the nature elements. Okay, so we have that there. And then I have my little skeleton. He's going to be dancing on the steps here. Let's see. Something like that. I want something behind him, though. I was going to do a stamp from the nature sheet like this. Now let's go ahead and do it. I said I was, but I thought it might come out too dark, and we might not be able to see him, okay? So here's what you do. If you don't want something so dark, then don't stamp it dark. I'm using black. If you don't have a gray stamp pad, go for the, I don't know, second or third impression. I'm wondering if this is like too light now. Let me see what the third one would have looked like. It's not too bad here. When in doubt, test it out, right? Okay. One impression. Okay. Now, let's see. Doing what I showed in my previous video on the usage of sky elements, okay? I'm blotting off the edge, but this is also a second impression of it, okay? By the way, this is a matte cardstock here. Okay, I'm going to wipe off a lot of this side where it's going to be going into that column. Now, this is an example where, it wouldn't be bad to mask off your columns on each side, okay? But, I'm being lazy here, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to wipe it off on each side so that if this blends in like that, it's not going to be a pain in the butt. All right. Now, maybe I took off a little bit too much there. But see this right here where it goes into that one? No big deal because we're going to color the columns in anyway, okay? So even on something like that, we didn't do any masking, okay? All right. It's not a hindrance to us. All right. Now, the skeleton, I should be able to stamp it on there and get a pretty good kind of dimensional view of it, okay? All right. We want ease of usage with all of our stamps. Now, let's see the skeleton right here. Here's just little detail things that I think about. You can stamp them vertical, or you can go like this maybe for a little bit more gesture. Oh, why don't I do this? I'll have him stamping off to the side, and it looks like he's, or she, is kind of like pointing to the moon, like celebrating the full moon there, like that. Actually, that looks pretty good. So you come up with these kind of visual themes or something like that during the process. You don't have to preconceive these types of things. It's just a little touch like this. It wouldn't be bad if I stamped it right over the moon, too. But I think something like that looks pretty cool. Look at that. It's almost like it's celebrating the full moon or whatnot. Almost looks like it's falling off the steps like a bloopers reel. Okay. Oh, let me see something here. See that this moon has this texture on the side of the moon. Let's do something like this. Okay. Put a little ink on here, and I'm going to get this texture out here on the side of the image. See what I mean? Doing stuff like that, now what I've done is I've given myself a head start in the toning process, okay? Because it's, the Stampscapes line, they're tonal designs, okay? So a cloud like this, or a rock or something like this, it's not linear, which would be like putting in a stick figure into the scene. So what I do is I make this tonal, but now look at that. I have a lot less to fill in on the side there like that. Okay, I can put a little bit down here too, but yeah, let's try that, being that we're on that subject matter. Okay, let's see. Let's blot that off. Okay, I don't want a second moon or something like that in there. Normally I don't press on this too hard because I don't want to remove too much ink, but I want to remove quite a bit here. Let's go for subtlety, okay? If you don't stamp enough ink, you can always re-stamp it on there, but if you stamp out too much on here, then you have a lot more to blend in, okay? So this is just a real faint application of ink from about a 1/4 inch down from the top, or the bottom, whatever way you say, The stamp can be used either way. Okay, so use this down here, like so. Yeah, that was pretty good. Now see that right down there? That's what I just put down there. So look at this right here. For me, looking at this as a stamper, okay, I'm thinking there isn't so much for me to have to do now in terms of adding my tones into this piece. So that's going to make the finishing off of this, the lighting of it, pretty easy to do. I can just make kind of strategic types of decisions as opposed to filling in vast bodies of open area. So you kind of fill it in beforehand as much as you can, not to make it overly busy or something like that, but if it does get overly busy, by the time we start adding in our tones, we can simplify things by toning areas out that we might want de-emphasized, and we can bring the emphasis to whatever we want. In this case, it'll be like the moon and the skeleton, this character, and maybe the rocks down here. you know, the rocks won't be the emphasis, but I'm thinking about in terms of lighting. Light, dark, light, dark, light. Okay, so let's see, let's get to that, and I'll add my foreground in later. Okay, let's think about our approach to this. I am just going to keep things really simple with the use of the VersaFine Clair, okay? Contemplating. You know, I've been using my colored pencils, and that would be good on here too. I'm not sure if the VersaFine Clair, I'm guessing it won't apply over the top of wax, so that if I do use a colored pencil, I should put this down first, okay? So that's what I always tell people when they're, you know, utilizing different media. Think about the general characteristics of things. You know, you don't have to know a ton of things, but just know like pigment inks are oil-based and like dye-based inks are water-based. So usually, I mean, there might be exceptions or something like that, but you wouldn't want to put like water-based things over an oil. Just like painting your house, you know, you can't use you know, like a water-based paint over an oil because it'll start peeling or whatever. I don't know. Maybe you can do something with like a primer or something like that. I'm not sure, but just in terms of the general kind of characteristics of things, you know, water-based over alcohol-based, probably not. But you can work the other way around. Okay. All right. So let's try this a couple different ways. Let's try a paper towel. Okay. Now I don't want to just go with that. Plus my VersaFine Clair is like super, super juicy. So if I go like that, you know, it's going to leave kind of a harsh, you know, tap. Now I just pressed extra hard just, you know, for emphasis, but it also has, like my paper towels have all that texture. So I'm kind of making this into a much softer type of surface right here, okay? By kind of roughing it up and flattening it out a little bit. Okay, so moons will be nice and light. That'll be our light source, so don't tone out everything, okay? It's being kind of selective in terms of your toning, all right? Now watch this too. The perimeter of my piece right here is going to be fairly dark because I like to frame things off really nicely. So a lot of times what people tend to want to do is they want it like this, from the top to bottom. They're toning like that. But you're not doing that. What you're doing is you're kind of toning from the outside edge in like this. So that way you get this transition, okay, from light or dark to light when you're doing that. That way you get this beautiful transition of tonal change. It's going like this, okay? See, every time I go that, it's a little bit harsher, and then I'm doing that, so it's like you're sweeping, okay? Now, if you want it darker, then, you know, you can hit it in there, or something like that, but that's how you're doing it. That's all I'm doing, and I'll do that throughout the piece. If I want some area lighter in here, then I make a much shorter stroke, okay? So it's kind of staying in there. Now, what I feel right now, here's what I can tell. My VersaFine Clair isn't completely dry. You know, the pad was like super juicy. That's why it's so beautiful and dark black, okay? I'm smearing some of this over here, okay? To me, I'm not worried about that. I'm definitely thinking about it, though, okay? I don't want to smear everything, okay? But for me, on this piece, remember, like I said, I'm going for that kind of more charcoal-y type of feel, all right? Like, you know, using charcoals, it's like you're kind of like controlling kind of smudges or something like that. So I want it kind of smudgy, you know, I don't want this to be like a real clean piece, okay? I would want it cleaner if I was doing like probably dye-based things or something like that. I still want it kind of murky. Maybe that's, you know, maybe that's the you know, a good kind of a description of kind of the idea that I'm going after, okay? Now, I haven't done this before like this, so I'm kind of playing around, especially the Clair. I haven't really... I've done blending on things like foils with the Brilliance pigment ink. But this is really different, okay? It's different in feel, okay? But, I mean, this is coming along. I mean, I did like a quarter of the page or something like that, and it just took like a couple minutes, right? I'm blabbing away, as always in my videos. See this right here, this rock right here? Remember how if you've watched my video on tonal kind of changes for depth, kind of a recent series of videos, I talk about, where to add your tone. Okay, now on these rocks, you just look for it where it's darker on the rocks, just in general, but not, you don't have to adhere to that. But it just kind of gives you a head start. But basically, it's on the bottom sides of things. Okay, so like on these rocks, there's different forms. It's not just like one big outline of a rock. There's like different facets to the rock. Okay, so see this right in here where I kind of model it. Some of it's toned in, and some of it isn't. It's usually on the top sides of it are going to be a little bit lighter because most of the times you're top lighting things. But now watch this. See this rock right here? I can make that top of the rock stand out a little bit more where I've left it light by making the area behind it a little bit darker. Okay? They call that, I don't know, we used to call it making that area pop by making the area behind it darker. Now I don't want it that dark. I want it, kind of just a little bit of a shade back there. Okay? Now see, I haven't even re-inked this yet. I'm going to have to pretty soon, but I really like how it is right now. It's just giving me a really light shade of gray. See this right here? I can come around my little figure there with a 5% gray, or I don't know, whatever it is, 2% gray probably. It's really dry. It's actually nicer to work with now than it was over here. This was a little bit too wet for me. I didn't have a lot of control over it. Okay, so see what I mean? You just keep using it. Most people get, if they haven't done this before, they go like this. I can't see anything. Wet, blob, okay? But no, you just kind of get it with repetition. And when I say it's like a 2% gray or something like that. It's not like that whole area is going to take me 2%, 3%, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 8, I mean, that's what's happening, but watch, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20. That's, I don't know, that's like a few seconds to do that, to build up that tone to whatever value degree you want. Okay, now see this right here? Here's this area behind my column there. I'll hit it more, if I want to go darker, then I'm going to have to re-ink, but, you can come in here like this. See, I'm kind of working it from the outside edge in like that, and at this point in time, if you really want to fill it in, you can go like this. But, just in general, I would kind of keep control over it a little bit more. Okay, coming in these columns. Okay. I do want my columns to look fairly crisp, and not too muddled. So don't do it, don't go over it when they're sopping wet with ink. Okay, coming around here, do you see how I'm kind of putting emphasis onto the moonlight by making the area around it? It's like maybe a 5% gray? Maybe it's less, I don't know. So you can just keep building it up like this. This is where, see, I didn't hit that area with the moon too much. But like I said, you don't worry about that because you're just going to fill it in with tone anyway. Getting kind of the area in there filled in with texture, it just gives you a little bit of head start, but if you don't get it, then in the impressions, then you just get it in the tone here. And then if you don't get it in the tone really well, then you get it in the highlighting. So there's plenty of leeway in terms of the entire process here. Then it's a little bit too much black there on that column. See, I'm putting this column right here. I'm making the left side of it darker, okay? I'll even that out with some colored pencil there. It's a little bit blotchy, okay? Maybe this isn't the ideal kind of applicator for that, but so be it. And on this one, I'm making the right side of the column a little bit darker so that we bring emphasis to the lighting. Interior lighting, interior reflective light on the column. See that? All right. Come down here. The marble stairway. marble stairways on one of the Greco-Roman sheets, as well as the columns. There's different kind of sets that include I don't know, things like pediments and tablatures and columns, figures. That was one of my first rubber stamp design series that I ever did, and that was for my former company that I used to work for, called a Stamp in the Hand Company. Really fun years working for them. I went independent after I graduated from college and started my own company. I wasn't thinking about doing that, but I don't know, I really wanted to explore some other kind of things within the scenic stamping kind of genre that I had created while there. And been doing it ever since. Thank you so much for the support, by the way, for everyone that have been supported the Stampscapes line. I still enjoy doing what I do. From a stamping aspect as much as ever. My gosh, I'm kind of playing around and figuring things out. I've never done like a Clair tonal scene before, okay, on this mat here. So kind of figuring it out as I go, getting the feel for it, so there's still things that I haven't done, There's more things that I haven't done than I have tried in stamping in general, by far, and that's always kind of exciting for us paper crafters. I always love the spirit of the paper crafter, always looking forward to new things and trying new things and learning about new things coming out, etc. Lately I've been kind of trying to apply some things that I already have to my scenes, colored pencils and whatnot. Okay, so here I'm adding some kind of thicker areas in here on the perimeter. So I am using a much wetter application of that. But that's after I've kind of established my color ranges in grayscale. See right down here in the column area, I didn't kind of match up my columns really quite well. I didn't stamp it down low enough, but you fill it in with tone anyways, and who cares? Okay, but see where I'm going right here? Kind of there's oscillation of light through the oscillation of shadow. Light, dark, light, a little bit of dark, light, dark, light. You know what I mean? You kind of keep doing that, and this piece right here kind of oscillates with your lighting scheme right here. So it's not just coloring and filling everything in, it's coloring it in kind of strategically. And you don't have to know too much about strategies with that. Just know that it's kind of like checkerboarding. It's light, darker, light, darker, right? Might be just a little bit of a strip of tone like that, okay? You just kind of break it up. So instead of it just being light in here and dark outside, you kind of break it up a little bit, and you do it from that outside to inside application of tone, okay? So we'll just keep working with that. I'm going to let this set up and dry a little bit, and then come back to it. And I want to see how this pigment ink dries on here, and if it dries much lighter in appearance. All right, I am back. It's probably been about a half an hour or so. The Clair looks... I'd say it looks pretty true to the wet incarnation of it. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit. Pigment inks, I don't know. Pigment inks, they always seem to dry lighter than what they look like when they're freshly applied, okay? Except for the white, when you're doing that. But yeah, I don't know, it has that kind of I don't know, a deeper, more saturated look when applied, okay? Now, it might be a little bit different on glossy cardstock, okay? I don't know if the Clair will dry on glossy. I don't know. If you know the answer to that one, let me know in the comments section. I probably remember. I don't know. I haven't used it. I've been using my my Brilliance inks just because I know it'll dry, and it'll dry fast, and you can heat set right away. So, yeah. Um, but yeah, if you know for sure. Um, okay, let's see here. Putting a little bit of a shadow on this figure. See how it kind of anchors her into the scene? And then we have the grass there, so you don't have to be like a really good blender, okay? Like I'm not doing a great job, it's just that there's so much texture inherent in the designs, okay? It it removes the need for me to be, you know, extra smooth in terms of my applications here. Oh, here's something I didn't even I completely forgot about. I haven't done this for a while, but you take an edge like this. You've probably seen this done in for mountains or skies or whatnot, clouds, and then you can get some extra textures in here. You know, with the ripped paper towel, and I say torn paper towel because you don't want it real straight, but you do that and you get these kind of extra textural forms kind of built in to your shadow builds or toning, okay, like that. All right, yeah, just one little paper towel will do it. This is your mask for imagery, your mask for shading. A ripped edge paper towel. You can practice your paper towel ripping. I've joked about that before, and people thought I was serious. I just say, what we want to do is we want to practice tearing your paper towels. All right, I think that looks pretty good there. Now, like I said, this is going to dry probably lighter than what it looks like. If I spray seal this, though, I'm guessing that it will become darker, just like dye-based inks do. Dye-based inks look more saturated in value and in intensity, richness, okay, especially if we're talking about color, when you spray seal things. Spray sealant, I don't know, unless you just can't stand the smell or something like that, I would really recommend it. I mean, for the price of one can, that's like one stamp pad or one Copic marker or something like that. People have a gazillion of those, but they don't have one can of spray sealant. One can of spray sealant you can use on every piece, and it improves every single piece that you do. In terms of your saturation, protection, I don't know, some UV protection if you get the UV one, just longevity and overall, I don't know, beauty. Beauty beautifies and protects. It probably says that on the can or something like that too. And I mean, you can use it on, like I said, every piece that you do, or uh, I don't know. It's good for it'd probably be good for 50 cards or something like that. But if you can make all of them, I mean, what media out there can you apply to everything for an improvement on everything? And even if it's just 10%, 10% over 50 cards, that's more than any single um, lone piece of media that we have in our repertoire. It's a coding for everything. And you'll see it, you'll too. I don't know. Try it on pieces. Try it with whatever media you're working with too. It's not just inks. You can use it on your oxides and whatever alcohol marker pieces and whatnot. Dye-based inks, colored pencils. Colored pencils, might be more of a fixative thing like pastels or something like that. Pastels, a lot of times you work with a workable fixative, but it is a spray sealant, though. It's just not glossy, and there's matte and glossy. The workable fixatives are sealants, but they're always matte, so that you can apply more charcoal, colored pencil, graphite, all those fun things on there. All right, so anyways, we've refined the piece a little bit more. It's not bad. It just is one color of ink, but I think it's pretty rich in terms of your tonal palette. It's because we're not just working with black. You're working with 5% gray, 10% gray, 15, 20, 30, 50% gray. You know what I mean? And you get it from one ink. You can do that with every single color of ink that you have. Even if you're starting off with a light blue, wiping it off a little bit and applying it, you have an even lighter blue. Okay, it doesn't change the hue of it. You're not going to go from like a warm gray to a cool gray by taking off some, but you can work the value of every hue in your ink, okay, by doing things like this. Since I'm still using my very dry application here, I'm getting a very dry application next to my light right there. I want my light to remain light, and I want those forms to still show that I stamped out, so I do a lighter application of the post-impression stamping, okay? All right, so anyways, yeah, nice and murky. I don't think I need to do that finger painting thing. My fingers already get really inky. Let me see something here. I don't know. There's a pretty decent amount of control here. Look at this. I can kind of wipe it off too with my finger. My finger is I don't know. I guess it is somewhat porous, but not very. I don't know. That's a little bit too much. I'm just trying to make a point here that you can kind of go with, all kinds of different types of applications and tools. Why not use your God-given, stamping tools? Okay, now let's take a look here. Okay, now one of the things that I like to do is I like to tint my pieces. Now, I've never tinted water-based over oil before, okay? But let's go with something like a distressing antique linen, walnut stain, or something like that. I don't know, you want to use peeled paper, whatever. It would just, let's change the color scheme here a little bit. And now I'm thinking, God, do I want to go with that, or do I want to go with a bluish tinge? Let's go with a warmer one here. Let's go with the antique linen. It'll make it look kind of a little bit more sepia. It's not going to look sepia print, I know what that is, but it'll give it that kind of aged, type of spirit, okay? I think. I don't know. Let me try it with the cotton ball here. I'm just not quite sure about the application kind of speed of dye over oils. Okay, now you're saying, hey, you can't, you just said that you can't work water-based over oils, okay? Yeah, I get that, but where I want to add this in is more in the areas where I've retained the white of the paper. I didn't go over it. You know what I mean? Out here, I don't know if it's going to do anything because it's that oil on there, okay? Let's give it a try. I do start in the oily area, though, okay? Or the inky area, okay? All right, and I have a little bit too much on here. Let's see if I can kind of spread that around in here, okay? Now, I still want to maintain some of that white of the paper, but look at that there. Doesn't that look like a richer kind of grayscale? Well, that's a lot of antique linen there. I'm going with the antique linen because it's very light in value, okay? So it's not a super dark, like brown or something like that. It's very light, as a matter of fact, if you try stamping. Okay, now, what I'm doing is I'm picking up some of that oil-based ink, okay? But that's okay. If it's a little bit muddy, it'll add to that kind of, potentially, kind of that murkiness. Okay, you see that right there? All right. Oop, that's not it. I was inking up in the Clair. I'm just using the cap here, the top here for the. Okay, no. Okay, I thought this was getting a little dry, but I pressed and I squeezed down a little bit more. Okay, so it's back in the cotton. Someone asked me, why don't I use the cotton ball over the paper towel to apply some of the inks? And I said, well, you could try it. Sometimes I want things a little bit streakier, though, especially for water or something like that. I want like this real streaky look, okay? The cotton ball would just be, you know what I mean? Well, I don't know. That looks like a pretty good streak there. But I think in general it's going to be a softer look. Most of the times I use both of them in conjunction with one another. I just use them for different types of things. Like this one right here I usually use for the pigment ink, to give a real soft application. All right, see, you can get a little on your moon too. Now the moon, like I said, I want that to be largely white because I want to add in some of my white pigment ink, so I don't want to tone everything out because I still want a white light in here. So whatever light source you're doing, whatever colored light source you're doing, that's the type of reflective color that you can add back in here in terms of reflective light, okay? So does that make sense? I mean, if you're doing a moon and it's, it's not going to be very colorful. There might be a slight warmth to a moon, especially if it's on the horizon or something like that. But by and large, there's the absence. You can't see like a bunch of different colors at night, okay? Because it's like reflected light off of the moon. It's not, directly from the sun. So it's kind of a little bit more of a, by and large, a cooler light in general. Okay. So if you're doing a sunset type of scene, it's warm lights, warm, rich, golden light. That would be the light that's being reflected in the scene. Okay. All right, so that looks okay. I don't know what that looks like. I'm going like this. Oh, I might have had some white pigment ink in here from the... I'm using a used cotton ball here. It was just sitting on my desk, and I think there was some white pigment ink in there, so... I'm getting a little bit of white over here. Okay, that's a little blotchy here looking. But here's, in general, here's the overall look. It's going to look a little bit different when it dries. It's going to dry lighter than how it looks right now. And I think that'll be for the best. Some of this is a little bit, I wouldn't call it extreme, but it's a little bit much. Okay. Okay, so I have my kind of murkier, let me see. What I'm getting is a bunch of fingerprints now, too, by touching into my wet oil-based inks, okay? It's all my fingerprints. You can gather the evidence that I've been here. Okay. There we go. See, I'm used to working with dye-based inks when I'm doing this type of kind of color scheme, value scheme, so I'm not used to it being wet to the point of like real big thick fingerprints showing, as here with the Clair. Okay, so that being said, you just reapply it if you need to. I'm going over that white too that I put in there. Okay, so let's go for some additional tones, or there's a lot of things I could do. I still have my white ink to give that kind of misty, frosty glow in here. And then I have some additional stamps that I want to stamp in here. I want them nice and crisp. This is a beautiful, beautiful pad for that. So maybe some highlights. I think we can do, let's do, you can do it in whatever order you want. But let's do some of that now. I'm going to use my Brilliance white just because it'll dry faster. The whole thing is really, quite wet right now, so. All right, I've mentioned this in previous videos, 100% cotton, with your applications there. The acrylics, synthetics wick moisture, okay? They take moisture off the body if you're wearing like a synthetic fibers or whatnot. The natural ones tend to hold that moisture like cotton. So that being said, when you use something like this, you want this to absorb moisture, okay? Otherwise, it's going to be taking you forever to apply the color, okay? And I've tried the other cotton balls, okay, or balls, and 100% work just so much better. And it's not like they're expensive, This bag I've been using for like 2 years. I don't think I've gone. It's 200 cotton balls in here that I purchased. I don't know. It's been like a year and a half. I don't even know if I've used up half. And I use these like on practically every scene. Okay. And you can use them for many scenes too. Okay, so I'm adding this around the moon. Now it's fairly light around here, so I'm applying kind of white into light, so you can't really see it. Okay, but now where I always say where this really shows up is where light meets dark. Okay, so I'm putting it in the lighter area, and then I'm bringing it into that, transitioning it into the darker area. Okay, like that. Okay, see that right there? It's a little bit, a little bit softer. So this is where my kind of textural contrast starts to come into play. Okay, we start adding these softer types of applications of media for a textural, visual textural contrast. It's just nice having something soft in a stamped piece. All of my images are made to be very crisp. We want crisp imagery, but what you do is you can go in there and you can have the benefit of the crisp imagery, but then you can have the softness of some other element. So you get this big extended textural range. Even if you just add a little bit of it somewhere within there, it's still within the piece. Okay, see this lighter area down here where light meets dark. I'm taking it and I'm putting it into my figure a little bit like this. But I'm not putting it everywhere. I just want to oscillate it a little bit so we get this nice textural contrast. If you put it over everything, it could look a certain way, but I think it looks best to provide contrast for your viewer. Right there. See how I'm oscillating light and dark, but we're also oscillating crisp. Look at those crisp forms right in there. And soft, okay? See this? Dark light, crisp, soft. All these little types of things might be kind of confusing for some people. It's just like, hey, I just want to stamp a simple card, okay? This is simple right here. Basically, if you just go dark on the edge and transition it, okay, to light, like that. You go dark to light. And then, when you use your light to dark, you hit it from the inside out and you transition it. So use more to less. With black, you use more to less, outside to inside. Lighting, inside to outside, okay? Like that. And what you do, to have control over it, you just apply a little at a time, okay? Like in here, that could be it. And that's like going to, from a textural standpoint, it's going to increase your textural range, visual range. That's part of the visual language is texture. It's going to extend things by 100% because there was none of it before, and then you suddenly add a little bit, and it just really, it'll put something way over here, like here's, crisp, and here's soft, and here's the range, okay? If everything is just only right here, and you put a little bit over here somewhere, you have this range now. It's not just a one kind of note visual. From a textural standpoint, you might have, other types of things like colors and, you have content and everything like that. You're making things richer from that aspect too. But the textures, you can't kind of minimize what that does from an emotional standpoint in a scene. Doesn't mean you have to use it on everything, okay? But it really adds. I mean, look at this thing right here. See, I'm adding it in my lighter areas like that. Okay, and look what that does. Doesn't that give it... It's the atmosphere. So we have these images like the skeleton and, the reclining figure. Though they're not, small characters within the piece, but what's the strongest element now in the piece? Is it the skeleton? Is it the figure right here? Is it the moonlight or whatever? Or is it kind of that atmosphere? The fog becomes kind of the star of the piece. You're taking it from beyond the imagery, okay? Well, the fog's an imagery too, but I'm talking about like stamp imagery, okay? All right, let me put some on, maybe on the glowing around the column. See what I'm doing here? I didn't stamp that column far enough down, so I'm putting a little bit of fog right there too, so it kind of obscures my, impression right there. So I'm kind of bearing that, mistake or whatever. I don't even really consider those things mistakes because you just, something like that happens, you just cover it up, and that's part of the, it's part of the scenic stamping kind of process anyways. You just minimize the things that you don't want the viewer to see, and you emphasize the things that you want them to see. Or you want them to focus on, I guess you can say. Is that right there? Oh my gosh, I was working off screen. Sorry, I forget to do that, but here it is overall. Look at all that misty fog and atmospheric, I don't know, whatever, detailing. Okay, so let's go back to this. Okay, so we went crisp, stamping all our imagery out, adding things like the inks in here, kind of smudges, makes it all smudgy and things like that. And then we add something like this, and it makes it softer and softer and softer. So we went from crisp to soft, right? But now I'm going to sandwich that softness with another layer of crisp, okay? So you take your... This is why we kind of save this for the end. Now see, if I stamp this out already, I would have, it would be hard to avoid it with the white pigment. So you just keep building on it like that. Or if you don't like something, I don't like that area right there, you know what I mean? Just stamp a branch in front of it or something. There's nothing in here that I don't like, but I'm going to stamp a branch in there anyways because I think it looks good. So see what I mean? Always stick with your pieces and see them through. See where it takes you if you don't like something as it's developing. I did a scene recently that looked horrible until you add in those, really crisp images in the foreground. It was the one that, I think I called it Eyes or something like Eyes in the Darkness or something. See like that? I masked that off and I have this crisp little craggy branch in the grass like that. I stamped it in here, I masked that off, but now I'll stamp one right here, so it's like this branch is closer than that one because that one's farther up in the composition. And I design all my stamps where, if you know these stamps, you're going to say, oh, okay, that's the same stamp used over there and there and there. But I don't want it to look so, similar that it's super obvious that it's the same one. So see like that? So see that it's going crisp, soft, and then crisp again like that. I mean, look at all that depth right there. And it's only using, we're only using one color of ink too, it's just black. Okay? So you can create a great deal of depth in your pieces. Okay? Now I should use the smaller version of this, but I'll just use the different portion of it, like this. Okay, so it's like real kind of prickly and, I don't know, kind of a little more Halloween-ish, maybe. All right, that's the spiny branches. Spiny branches are, I mean, it's a craggy looking, kind of, not inviting form. But something like this, you put little, like pink little blossoms on it. And it's, it's cherry blossoms in the spring or something like that, So kind of the craggiest of branches, can really be kind of a symbolic of life, just the way you use them. Same thing with something like this, right? This is perfect for little cherry blossoms or apple blossoms or something like that that you want to put on here. All right, so keep that in mind, or you can leaf it up, with leaf sprig or something like that. And what I do on all of these designs, I design them to be used independently like that, but I take into consideration the spacing on here for things like a bird on top of this, or, if we do put in little blossoms or something like that, little pink blossoms, I really need to try that with my big, thick 3mm paint pens. But all of this has been taken into consideration if people use that so that I don't condense the branches too close, where it would be kind of harder to do those types of looks. Okay, here's a branch right here. I don't know, maybe I stamped this one too much over that moon. Well, it looks pretty good. Okay, so kind of coming in from the top like that. I don't want to obscure my skeleton, so I'm going to kind of flank him with branches like this. Okay, so we have that, like that. It's like a curtain of, like fingers or something like that. And we have this coming up from the base. Okay. And contemplating if I want anything else in here in terms of kind of foreground foliage. I think that's good right there. I'm just going to stay with that. Okay, now I have a feeling that those ones there will look fairly dark even when dry. They might not, I'm not sure. Okay, let's hit this with some pen highlighting. I shake this and I can really hear that little thing rattling around in there, so I think this one's just about had it. Hey, that's a good thing. That means you've used up all the paint in your, your paint pen marker. But it starts getting a little bit, it's not flowing as well. It's dry. All right. Pen number 2, Meowsen, acrylic painter. Thank you for your service, okay? These come in packs of 8. There's 6 white and 2 black. All right, let me get a new pen. I'll shake it up and get it ready to. All right, I just thought of something. I think something will look really nice on this, and that's some bleed-proof white. All right, I was lazy yesterday and I didn't really mix this up before I used it. It looked okay, but the consistency wasn't ideal. And it worked, but I don't know, I wasn't getting any kind of variation. It was a little too thick. You want that about like syrup, like a thick, syrup or something like that. You don't mix up the entire bottle. I just mixed up a little bit off the top. Okay. Take your toothbrush and really take out a lot of that paint, okay? You don't want it to, drop a big blob on you. And a little goes a very long way when you're really using it very minimalistic like this. Okay, so I'm not just going zip like that. I'm just kind of going, releasing like a couple little hairs of my brush at any given time, okay? Let's see. I don't know if you'll even be able to see it. It creates such small little dots. You can see it more, of course, in the darker area. I don't know what this represents, Does it represent snow? Is it ash in the air. Who knows? I think it's moon dust. From a textural point of view, it just, I don't know, it makes it look a little more interesting to me. It's like he's dancing or something like that, and there's like confetti coming down, kind of celebratory, right? You know, if you put this all up in the sky, it's stars. If you put it at the base of a waterfall, it splashes, you know, on something like this. It's just some kind of interesting textural element. Does that kind of make it look a little bit more, I don't know, exciting or whatnot? Dr. Martin's bleed proof white. That's another one of those things. That and, you know, some spray sealants. You can't use this on, you know, you wouldn't use that necessarily on everything, but. Okay, so anyways, this is a brand new pen here. My new Meowsen marker. Let's pull that off right there. Okay, let's get this flowing. We'll see if I shook it up enough. I'd have to admit, it is kind of a hassle to have to shake this up as much as you do every time. But, as I've mentioned in other videos too, I think that's the thing that, yeah, look at that. Beautiful, flowing ink. Sometimes I can't draw so fast with it, like I was trying to write with it. You know, it starts to get really thick, you know, when it's on its last leg, but having to shake this up so much each time before you use it, I think that's the thing that keeps it from clogging too. It just, you know, if it sets out overnight, you know, it's not sitting there in the nib real thick or anything like that. It just, the ink separate, you know, the paint separates from the binder, which is presumably water, and it just, they never, I don't know, they never clog on me. Okay, I haven't had one clog on me. I think that's what happens with the gel pens too. A lot of you have used, if you've been stamping for a long time, like gel pens were notorious for clogging. These days, the new gel pens, like those super cheap multi-packs, I mean, they're shockingly cheap. They're, I don't know, some pens could be like 10 cents each in the multi-pack. 100 pack of 180 for whatever, you know, 25 bucks, you know, for a 100, it was 360, 180 colors, 180 refills for those. 360 pens for like $25. But the gel, I can tell it's thinner than the old ones. Okay, now that can be good, you know, good and bad. Okay, the gel isn't quite as opaque. Okay, but there's something to be said for, you know, gel pens not clogging up on you after a year or something like that, where you're tossing out 25 pens if it was in a pack or all of them. I've had some packs where they didn't work, brand new. That was the old packs that, you know, that was 15, 20 years ago. But these days, they all seem to be working pretty good. And the paint pens are, you know, the same way. They're, I don't know. I think they worked out a lot of the bugs out of it. Okay, now I'm putting the highlights in the lighter areas. Now, if these rocks are super dark, then you don't put a highlight on them because you're saying that they're, you know, the lighting isn't really hitting them very much. But you know, if you've left some areas a little bit light, where light, it's dark. Okay, that's where it shows up really well. Okay. So I'm adding these little highlights on these rocks here, just catching some of the light, okay? See, it's dark over here, so I'm not going to put any over there. What this represents is light hitting that area. So it's like largely down the center right here. On the top of the figure, I kind of did it on the top of her form, just like the top of the forms of the rocks. Okay, Now, in the grass is a different texture, right? So what I might use is, a few little dots like this, okay? But I'll concentrate it more in the light, okay? Closer together. And then as I go into the darker areas, I kind of space the dots out, and then they just kind of peter out. So you're tapering that lighting, okay? More in the lighter areas, and then less in the darker areas. Okay? Maybe the darker area has one dot, something like that. And here, I can barely see the white. So I'm putting quite a lot. And then as I move into this darkness, dot or two, something like that. So this little area right in here, I've kind of lightened it up a little bit with that fog, so I can, put a few little highlights in there too if I want to. These are little detailed things. I think it looks pretty good without it, but when you add this in, if you ever kind of play around with these pens and do this, it really adds that extra touch into your pieces. These will look really great on letter forms. You stamp out something that says happy birthday, and you put a few little highlights on some of those letter forms, and it makes them look three-dimensional. Like on something like this, okay? Here's acrylic paint pens, okay? Now see, you can put a little bit of a highlight, like that. On some of these. I mean, this is just like an example, but so you see that right there? So they're a little bit more dimensional, like they're, now these are all a white outline, so it's not as effective, but you see what I mean? I'm kind of putting the highlights on, certain things like this. A little thing like that. Like that. I know a lot of you are saying, I liked it better without that. Hey, I am fine with that. I can see I'm putting a little bit on the center here. Here's kind of a good example of that. See, there's more dots in the lighter area of my marble steps, and then see as I go out here, I just kind of taper it off. So see, they're a little bit more concentrated here, and then like here's a isolated dot out there, and then this gets really dark in here, so I don't do it. Now watch on the inside of my columns, okay? Not on the outside, but on the inside section right here, okay? Because the moonlight is shining on that side of the column, I'll put, some highlights on that, okay? You see it's darker up here, so I'll just put like a dot up there. Okay, and let's see here. Here's my column right here. This one's being kind of hidden by the branch, so I won't put too much on that. Something like that. So see on the interiors of the column, I mean, you can barely see it right here, but on the inner sides of it, it's capturing some of that light. It's reflecting some of that light on there. Oh, here's a perfect little spot here. Our dancing little skeleton. I got that skeleton a little bit too smudgy and dark, So I can just kind of bring it back, certain parts of them. I'm not trying to color it all in. I'm just putting little highlights like I did, like on those letter forms on that box. You put a little dot here and there on them. Okay? And it just kind of brings them out of the background a little bit. The highlight, you don't have to do the whole thing. Just a little bit will bring emphasis. Okay. I should let this dry and format it into a card. All right. Oh. Let's go down into this area. See, it's lighter on the top portion. And it's a pretty light area. And then I taper it out. Okay, a little bit less over here. More up top here. Less down here, okay? You don't have to be super careful. I'm not trying to be precision with this. It's, especially in the grass, maybe on, a straight edge. Yeah, I try to stay on the straight edge, but When there's grass like this, it's a little bit, if you're kind of loose in spirit, just like the design is looser in spirit, you know, like that. Okay. Yeah, we don't have some precise line to stay on. Okay, there we go. So, with that loose kind of spirit, no need for precision. Alright, but anyways, here we have it. Oh, here, let's do some of these. I'm going to make a little bit of a larger dot, okay, on some of these areas. Okay. I'm doing that thing that I tell people that all of us do, and that's I'm spacing my little dots too symmetrically. So here, let's bring some a little bit closer to one another. I'll show you what I mean by that, why I'm doing that. Let's put a large dot down here. Okay, so we have variation in here, but I'll show you what I do with those dots in here. See those larger dots? I want some variation with the splatter painting, but you just can't get that. You know, it's totally unpredictable. So some of these larger ones. These ones right here are a little bit smaller than these ones right here. I mean, you could go pretty extreme and put a big one there, but I think that's good enough. And then let's go for a cotton swab. I need a new one. Let's see, I've got them all over my desk here. Some of them are used on one side and not on the other. So I just, I don't know, I just keep them. Because you can use them for multiple impressions or multiple usages. Multiple cards, whatever. All right, let's see, let me get my plastic peck on my tack and peel on all these blocks. Okay, let's go for some pigment ink here. Loosen your tip a little bit so it's not so, okay, that one's used. This one's not used. I loosen up the cotton a little bit. And let's get some ink on here. Now, if you don't do this way, if you haven't seen my scenes before, you really have to blot off a lot of that. Okay. Alright, my white pad isn't so juicy that I have to blot off too much. But remember, I did kind of fray this a little bit where it's softer. And then, let's go in here. And these are like these little glowing orbs on the larger dots, okay? You can do some on the smaller dots too. But this is that whole magic that we're adding into the piece. It's like these little glowing orbs. It's like a little celebration, or they say like orbs are kind of like spirits, you know, or something like that, right? Someone takes a photo and there's like orbs in the piece. You know, maybe they're little lightning bugs or, you know, fireflies, whatever you call them. Okay. I'll make this orb kind of lower on the horizon, which usually represents something a little bit closer to us. I'll make that glow a little bit bigger, and the one down here, maybe I'll make it a big glow. Okay, something of that sort. I got a little pretty big splatter right there. I'll write over the figure. Reclining figure. That. Okay. I mean, you don't have to do it like big orb, small orb, back. You know what I mean? Just, it's good for variation. Just, you know, have some things a little bit varied. And it makes for just a really fun visual. These really make some great stars in your sky if you're doing it in the sky. I see people starting to employ this kind of look in their pieces, and I think it looks great in their pieces. I'm really glad they're doing it, because it's adding that little crisp little dot but then you have the glow around it at the same time, so you have that sharp versus soft aspect to it, and it's just so easy to do. Yeah, for a little touch. If you want lightning bugs, you can take like a lime green, paint pen or something like that, and put those down there, and then put that little touch over the top of it. I've never seen them in person. I always want to. It's like that and the Northern Lights. Never seen it. Aurora Borealis. In person. Would like to one of these days. Yeah, I've seen videos of them and whatnot, but in person. People always tell me that they used to collect them in jars and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know if they'd let them go. They'd probably collect them at the light and let them go or whatever, but... Okay, so anyways, there's my little final touches right in there. A lot of times what I do is I put little highlights on some of these branches and stuff like that, but there's so much texture going on in the background, I just want to leave those as is for, this piece. So anyway, so Dancing in the Moonlight part, 2 or whatever. I don't know how many times I've done little skeleton dancing around. A couple times, I'm sure. And I've done this little reclining nude in different compositions before. She's partially nude, but tastefully, so, kind of in the Greco-Roman styling, or more, more of a sculptural piece, probably, But, anyways, the biggest thing for this piece for me is the spirit of it, and trying to get that, certain type of mood down. I don't think this is horrifying or anything like that. It looks like, I don't know. It's like some sort of celebratory type of thing. He's just dancing with himself, not going out, and trying to scare anyone or something like that. He's able to come out every October 31st and, have a great time and stuff like that in the fog. So, all right. So, anyways, I'm going to allow this to dry for a bit, and I'll form it on a piece of paper. I don't know, maybe some kind of color around the edge might be kind of exciting to do too. Maybe like a silver foil or something. Maybe gold foil, to kind of bring out the, or maybe a gold startering period. I think that would be even better. Yeah, a little bit of white border to pick up that white, and gold around the sides, I think would look great. All right, we'll see. All right, we have a thin, this is what I do with all my pieces. I put that little thin border on there. And this is a piece of Star Dream. Isn't that beautiful? I think it's antique gold Star Dreams. And it has that little shimmer to it. But I felt that it kind of relates to that antique linen tinge. The antique linen is kind of like a lighter version of this gold in here. But, the antique linen is very, very subtle, but I thought it was appropriate for that. I think there's a lot of other, there's tons of other choices that you could have had. I just, I have the antique Star Dream and, the gold. And, it matched, decently with it. Okay, so I was thinking in here, I'm going to put this word stamp Dream. I have this other one that says Night. There's another one that says Moon. There's all kinds of choices here. Dusk, Star, you know what I mean? Spirit might have been bad. Silence, I think, would look cool there. But I'm going to put Dream. It was that skeleton's, it was that person who's now a skeleton's dream to be a dancer when they were alive. And now they get to dance for all eternity. Maybe under the full moon or something like that. That's my story for this piece. So, maybe every full moon at Halloween. That's not very often, huh? We'll say it's by the light of every full moon. But for eternity, that's not too bad. So I'll put that down there. I'm doing it in the white brilliance. I feel it'll stamp over that part, no problem. It's almost like, it's a little bit translucent, okay, and you can see it more in the dark. It's almost like a little ghost of a word stamp in itself there, isn't it? See, like that. So you barely see it there. In fact, it'd be kind of cool to do a couple different Dream, Moon, something, Star, or whatever. I don't know. But I think that's good enough there. We'll leave it at that. And there's my third installment of Halloween. See, I love busting these images out every, kind of holiday season. I don't know if I'm done with it. I don't know if I've used them on the foils before or something like that. Or even on a piece of iridescent stardring, maybe I'd have to do a scene. But, okay, so this is the first time I've ever done just a complete Clair tonal scene. I can't say that in the end result, I feel it's a whole lot different than the dye-based inks. The dye-based ink, it feels different going on. Dye-based inks are water-based and much thinner, slipperier, I think, than VersaFine Clair. And also this is on kind of that matte, kind of paper. It's coated, it's a cardstock. But I don't know, it's just a different feel. I don't know if it looks any more charcoalish, than dye-based inks, their viscosity inks and whatnot. But I don't know, there is kind of a sheen to it, huh? Because it's oil-based, that black like that. That kind of sheen like that kind of matches the iridescence of the, the iridescent paper too. I don't know. It was fun to do, and I think it would be something that I would do again. I don't know how I would choose if I just do it in dye-based inks or the VersaFine Clair. The VersaFine Clair pigment inks, because it's more surface-oriented, dye-based inks soak in. Pigment inks are a little bit more surface-oriented. This might be a little bit more permanent. Let's say if someone had it on display. They put it out every, Halloween season or something like that. The Distress Ink antique linen would, if this is exposed to sunlight, that antique linen would just get, faded out after the first, couple years of it, being on display. But I think the black would have a little bit more of a permanence, potentially, than the dye-based inks. I don't know. Like mementos aren't supposed to fade at all, but I don't know, just the idea of pigment inks being a little bit more permanent, I don't know, seems right, but like I said, I don't know for sure. Okay, now this is, do you see the difference between this side, how dark it is, and this side? Okay, I have a feeling that this side is going to get that like this side, so what I'll do is I'll spray seal. And it might retain the lightness, or the darkness of that. I don't know, again, I'm less experienced just with straight usages of something like a pigment ink. For something like this purpose, I've been stamping them on foils and whatnot, but not like on cardstocks too much, for the tonal range. But we'll see how that goes. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the card and the scene, and thanks as always for tuning into the channel.